While President Trump and his team face many questions at home whether he gave away too much in return for way too little at the Singapore summit, North Korea's state media touted Kim Jong-un's success in his dealings with America. Who's the real winner and loser, and what happens next with North Korea's nuclear arsenal? Few people know the so-called Hermit Kingdom better than our next guest. Old friend, compatriot Mike Chinoy, senior fellow at the U.S.-China Institute at the University of Southern California, former CNN senior Asia correspondent, and the author of Meltdown, the inside story of the North Korean nuclear crisis. Mike has visited North Korea 17 times. Indeed, he'd be on the air with us at CNN. I'd be in Washington or L.A., and Mike would be in North Korea. Those were great days, weren't they, Mike?
Yeah, a long time ago, but the North Korea issue hasn't gone away.
When was the last time you were there?
I was there about 4.5 years ago.
All right, what's your assessment of what happened in Singapore?
I think North Korean leader Kim Jong-un had a very good summit. He got a lot and gave away very little. The North Koreans have been looking for decades for their leader to get an equal face-to-face meeting with the President of the United States. Kim Jong-un's father, Kim Jong-il, wanted that and didn't get it, and his grandfather, Kim Il-sung, whom I met 3 times when I was working for CNN, wanted it and didn't get it. So this is huge for North Korea. It gives Kim Jong-un face, legitimacy, equal stature to the President of the United States, and he got all of that without actually taking any serious concrete steps to give up his nuclear arsenal. So I'd say he's the big winner, and enormous questions remain now about whether the North Koreans are going to do anything in return for what they got from President Trump.
But on Wednesday, the president tweeted, "There is no longer a nuclear threat from North Korea."
Well, I personally think that's absolutely not true. The North Koreans still have a significant nuclear arsenal. They are still producing fissile material, weapons-grade plutonium and uranium. They still have short-range, medium-range, and long-range missiles. To the extent that the U.S. and North Korea are being friendlier, the odds of North Korea using that against the United States go down. But the reality is they have all that, and if the American goal has been to try to get rid of it, we're, in concrete terms, not any closer.
All right, what do you make of freezing the regular military exercises held alongside the Republic of Korea forces? And that's viewed as a major concession to North Korea. How are they going to read that in South Korea?
I think the South Koreans are very perplexed by this because President Trump made that announcement apparently without consulting the South Korean government, or as far as I can tell, without consulting his own Secretary of Defense. The dynamic in this summit, frankly, as someone who's followed the Korea issue for a long time, was really strange because the Trump administration went into the summit saying they were looking for North Korea to agree to CVID, complete, verifiable, and irreversible dismantlement of its nuclear program. And of course, last year, President Trump threatened to go to war if the North didn't take steps in that direction. But the statement that they came out with was very bland. The North Koreans agreed to less robust steps than they had agreed in earlier agreements with the United States. And then President Trump unilaterally offered this concession, which the North Koreans have been angling for years. And as far as I can tell, so far, he hasn't gotten anything in return.
Okay, what is the impact, and you're one of the specialists on this, on China in all of this?
I think the Chinese have to be absolutely thrilled with what's going on. First of all, they don't want to see conflict on the Korean Peninsula. And I do think, in fairness to President Trump, for all of the questions about where this process is going to go, it's far better that the discussion be about how the U.S. and North Korea can get along than about whether the U.S. and North Korea are going to go to war. So the Chinese are pleased that the level of tension has been reduced. But also, when the American president says he's going to scale back U.S.-South Korean joint military exercises and suggested that he could put on the table for future negotiation the whole presence in South Korea of American military forces, the Chinese have been dying to see a reduction in the U.S. military presence in Northeast Asia, because that simply weakens the American strategic position in the Far East, and the result is that China is strengthened. So I think Beijing has to be thrilled.
Is there any risk that Kim Jong-un could lose his leadership? Do you have any idea if there are factions in North Korea against him?
People have been trying to figure out the internal dynamics in the North Korea for a long time, and there's been endless amounts of speculation. My own sense is that Kim Jong-un, although he was quite young when he took power after his father died in 2011, has proved himself to be a pretty ruthless operator. He had his uncle executed. He had his half-brother executed. He's had lots of other people either executed or removed from power. So I think his position is quite strong. And what he's gained domestically from this summit, if you look at the way the North Korean press has played the meeting, I think boosts him immeasurably. I think one of the most intriguing questions now is whether or not, with a significant shift in the whole tenor of relations with the United States, is Kim Jong-un going to show that he really is serious not only about reducing North Korea's nuclear arsenal, but about trying to implement some change in North Korea? He's talked about wanting more foreign investment. There are more elements of a market economy. He's certainly, in his own behavior, tried to become more normal international figure, meeting foreign leaders, less like the hermit kingdom we've seen. So that's going to be a really intriguing question. We don't know the answer, but it's not impossible that he could turn out to be an important figure for change. He's got to run that country he's only in his early 30s. He could live 50 more years. And I don't know that he wants his legacy to be an impoverished train wreck of a country, when he might be able to turn it into a more prosperous place, as we've seen in many other countries in Asia, like South Korea, Japan, Hong Kong, Taiwan, and Singapore.
Mike, you're currently in London. What's the reaction there to the summit?
Well, I think the general reaction in the West is astonishment that it happened, a certain degree of relief that the U.S. and North Korea have moved away from war, but enormous skepticism about where this goes. If you look at the British media coverage or international media coverage, as well as an American media coverage, and the comments of almost every serious North Korea watcher, the sense is that Kim Jong-un got a lot and President Trump didn't get much. The question now is whether this opens the door for something significant to happen in the future. You know, the North Koreans have always said, and they said this to me on my visits there, their ultimate goal was a fundamental change in the political relationship between North Korea and the United States, an end to years of enmity and hostility. And for North Korea, that's always been the precondition to do anything on the issues that the U.S. cared about, like nukes and missiles. So if they're getting that, the question is, will they now take some serious steps, as the administration keeps insisting they believe North Korea will, or will the North Koreans do what they've often done in the past, which is pocket concessions and put their hand out and ask for more while giving very little? That's a big question mark.
Mike, the president on Wednesday put out this tweet. So funny to watch the fake news, especially NBC and CNN. They're fighting hard to downplay the deal with North Korea. 500 days ago, they would have begged for this deal when it looked like war was going to break out. Our country's biggest enemy is the fake news, so easily promulgated by fools. You worked at one of those networks, so did I. What do you make of that tweet?
I think it's very frightening that the president of the United States should meet with a dictator of one of the world's most repressive countries, with one of its most appalling human rights records and a nuclear arsenal and a long track record of issuing explicit threats to nuke the United States, and come out of that meeting and say that the media is the biggest threat to the United States is frightening. I think it's reflective of all of the things that make Donald Trump, in my view, such a dangerous figure. The basic values of democracy, like a free press, don't seem to count with him. And it's interesting that he seems more comfortable with a dictator like Kim Jong-un than with ostensible allies like the Prime Minister of Canada or the Prime Minister of Germany.
Mike, great talking to you. Hope to see you again soon. Thanks for being with us.
Okay, take care, Larry.